G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of SuperCoach Edge, and thought I'd jump on and do a very quick, next iteration of my team reveal ahead of round 0, the opening round kicking off over the coming days. So there have been some messages that have been sliding into our DMs, comments on YouTube and the like, asking for when are you going to do your next team reveal. Well, here I am to do it just for you tuning in. So before I do that, I just want to duck across just to this next screen here, and I want to pay homage and thanks to all of you that have thus far supported us across all of our channels. I just really want to highlight here first and foremost on Twitter. We've ticked over 3,150 followers, which is just absolutely insane. But just to contextualize that, we've had an extra 500 people following us on Twitter or X over the past 30 days. So that uptick has been absolutely insane. But then on top of that, flicking across to our Facebook page, and we're now at 4.5k followers on our Facebook page, which again is absolutely insane. And every day we get notifications just flicking through where people have just followed us, liked our page. So to get that sort of number really is just mind-blowing. So again, I can't thank you enough. And then finishing off lastly with our YouTube, we are currently on 1,390 odd subscribers. We're so thankful of anyone that has subscribed, followed to all of our accounts, all that sort of stuff, to really validate to us that you are enjoying our content, all of the up-to-date information that we're putting out there across our channels, and lastly, all the content that we're putting up on YouTube. And likewise as well on podcasts. It's a little bit hard to sort of work out how people are enjoying our content unless you rate our content. I think if you are listening to us on Spotify, you can actually give us a star rating. So if you can give us 5 stars, it would be absolutely fantastic. And then, of course, Apple Podcasts as well. I think there is a rating system through them as well. Again, just to wrap it all up, can't thank you enough for tuning in, consuming our content first and foremost, but just going the next level, subscribing to our stuff, subscribing to our YouTube channel, and liking our content. So again, thank you. So without further ado, let's get into things, shall we? And flick across to our blank slate, as we always do, for our team and start from scratch. So let's kick it off with defense. Again, I will preface this and I'll flick through it because, the other ones have been a little bit lengthier, gone into a little bit more detail about players, especially new players that have come into my team. So we'll make this a little bit snappier, a little bit punchier. So probably easy to do in defense because it hasn't changed really at all apart from one player on the bench, which is kind of like it was a guy that was in and out of my team that I was discussing in the previous team reveal 2.0 video. So let's kick it off in D1. Dacos hasn't moved, set and forget. If you're not starting him, don't be silly. You're just going to find it impossible to bring him into your team, just because I reckon at this price point, as silly and strange as it's to say, 650 I reckon come the end of the season is going to be an absolute bargain. And don't worry about the Finn McGuinness tag. It's 1 week. Don't worry about the double, buy that he has. Again, it's 1 week. And I reckon he's going to make up, that loss of points. I think he needs to, make up an extra 5 points over the course of the 24 or 23 rounds that he's got, or 22, subtracting again the buy. But, to make up an extra 5 points on other primos like a Tom Stewart or a Sicily, for example, I think he can do it because I think he is going to be the highest averaging defender in SuperCoach for 2024. So hands down, here's lock and load. In D2 is Tom Stewart. Again, hasn't moved out of my team. Spoke about his value enough, given that his average did contain that injury-affected game in 2023 in the opening rounds. So he is a set and forget. Next up, we have Harry Sheezel, and he is staying in my side now. I think some people were worried about, in the practice game, the official practice game that is, with Zach Fisher playing alongside him. And, he scored, some people were like, well, he's not scoring out of the box, but he still scored 109 or thereabouts. So again, still has, if that's going to be his floor, his scoring floor, sign me up. Where do I sign? Lock and load me in. And that's what I'm doing with Harry Sheezel. I think he's still going to be able to punch out those sizable scores and provide us, a consistent high average from week to week. So lock and load with Shees Nuts in D3. Next up, we have a guy that hasn't moved out of my team all preseason, and it is Hayden Young. And we saw what he could produce in that official practice game. Again, Liam and I, we haven't actually gone through, had a chance to, I guess, analyse every single, official preseason game. I wrapped up a little bit of it with Liam in our previous episode when we went through the frequently asked players episode, but we wrote enough across our socials, so we don't want to be doubling up and wasting all of your time. So check out all the write-ups we did on Facebook and Twitter. But Hayden Young, he kicked like 2 goals, 3 in the official practice game, and all the worries that some people had about starting him, because in the match sim, he was thrown around the park, in defence, on the wing, all that sort of stuff. He was back to, that traditional role in the engine room. For me, alongside Brayshaw, alongside Sarong, he is the next best mid. Maybe even come into 2024, he could be even better, eclipsing both of those guys. And I'm a big, big fan of Hayden Young. Big kick, as I said, kicked 2 goals as well. Definitely helps, as we saw in that official preseason game. So he's a lock and load, and I think he is a must-have. So everyone should have him in their teams and should be way higher ownership than 42%. But you do you, boo. Next up, we have Zach Williams, of course, played half of the VFL game, didn't play the official preseason game, but he has already been confirmed to play round 0 by Michael Voss. I think it was on 360, and it'd be great to see him running back out there again. And I think, what he will be able to provide us is a consistent score, provided he is fit. Fingers crossed, all fingers crossed, knock on wood, all that sort of stuff, because, at full flight, we've seen historically he can average 80 to 90 odd. And if he can do that, he's going to make us upwards easily of 150k, if not upwards of 200 to 250k, if he can keep his fitness in check. So he is a lock and load at the moment. But of course, round 0, we get a free look at Williams to see how he plays and how he scores as well. So I guess I say lock and load on the basis that he gets through round 0 and he actually looks pretty good in his role, which I think he will be. Next up we have in D6 is, where is he? Might have to scroll. No, he's second up in 58% of teams. Nick Caulfield, like what I saw across the preseason as a whole. Really nice role, sort of, halfback pushing up to the wing. Really good mark as well, intercept marking as well, which is a big feature that I really wasn't expecting in his role. So he is a lock and load. On the bench, we have third most owned player in defence, 52%, Josh Gibcus. Again, similar to Caulfield, intercept marking. Good to see him back to full fitness. Best 22, best 23, including the sub, of course, but he's in the best Richmond team week after week. Lock and load will make us bulk cash, albeit maybe a slow burner, depending on how he scores and how he averages across the season. And speaking of slow burns, another guy that may be a slow burn, but flashed a bit of brilliance in the official preseason game, because he scored around about 70 to 80 odd off memory, and it is Zach Reid in 43% of teams. And as you would have seen in my previous Team Reveal 2.0 episode, I actually swapped out Zach Reid for... who was it? I think it was the mature age bloke, Ethan Phillips, for the Hawks. Just because I was unsure of Reid's role, but now with news and obviously since that video in the official preseason game, first and foremost, Reid played well, very well, scored well, but also Ridley is out of the team for at least 3 to 4 weeks with a bit of a quad injury. So again, shores up Reid's position in Essendon's defence and could be more share of the ball to go around. Let's move on to the midfield now, and we have, first up, again, probably don't need to talk about him too much. 43% of teams should be more than that, I reckon. Bontempelli, M1, really enough said. LDU is my M2, and he's dropped down the ownership a fair chunk because in his official preseason game, where is he? 9% of teams now, wow. So he didn't score that well. I think he scored around about, what was it, 30, 40, 50 or thereabouts. Wasn't the best and didn't look all that good. But I think preseason games, we can't read too much into them. There are some players that take the foot off the pedal that are managed, so on and so forth. And if we just cast our minds back to, this time last year, in the preseason game, LDU, I think he scored around about 55. But then, obviously, in the first 2 games of 2023, came out and absolutely smashed it, and it was to the tune of 143 and a 155 against West Coast and Freo. So, again, that just sort of validates that point there that, yes, you can read into the preseason form, but it's literally a sample size of 1 game. So, you can't delve too deeply into it and get caught up in it, which is what Liam and I are trying to sort of bang on about, that yes, the preseason form is a bit of a guide as a whole, but especially in isolation, because we only treat it to one official preseason game where most of the teams match up with their best 23. But then again, even so, with form and whatnot, it's one game. So I'm not all that stressed. But in terms of if I need to find a bit of money, I could potentially move him down to someone. But at this stage, he is in my team. Another change, actually, that I've made to my team, which is probably, I say another, but this is actually after Zach Reed. He was my first change. Second change is, if I scroll up, let me see his ownership. Errol Goulden, 41%. I'm a massive fan of Errol, as is Liam. He picked his breakouts heading into 2023, so he has a bit of a soft spot for him as well. But I just love watching him play. He's an absolute gun, and he's one of those guys that you tune in to watch the Swans play, and just he runs all day. He reminds me so much of a Dane Swan. He's everywhere. Like, he's obviously in the engine room, but he runs around like a winger, just following the ball on transition, and just racks up the ball all over the ground, can kick goals. He's just an absolute machine of a player. And I ended up changing Zach Butters to Goulden. Yes, I know, again, I say that you can't read too much into preseason games, all that sort of stuff, but when it comes to injuries, that's a different kettle of fish. And I think with Butters, I was scared off a little bit because, he does have that storied history of battling with fitness. And yes, it was only a minor ankle roll that he had, and no one else was around him. He was literally stepping back at a stoppage, rolled his ankle. But I heard Connor Rosie post-game in that preseason game saying that it was the second rolled ankle that he'd had in as many weeks. So I'm a little bit worried that he's on the cusp of maybe injuring himself, doing something silly. As we know, he throws himself in so hard. He's not the biggest build of a bloke, but just with his tenacity at the ball, he can sustain a bit of an injury. So with the opportunity to trade down or swap down to Goulden and save a bit of coin, I think that saved me, where are we? I think roughly it was around about 30k. Sorry, no, it was less than that. Apologies. It was 14k. So not much money you're saving by going Butters down to Goulden. But I just think Butters and Goulden, I think, yes, chances are they're both going to be in the top 8 scoring mids come the end of the season. So it's pretty much of a muchness. But I'd prefer to go for Goulden without that injury history and without that big question mark over his fitness throughout the season. I'm just going to be covering my eyes if I start with Butters. So here's what it is. And an opportunity to jump on Goulden from the very get-go. I know he's got the double bye, but it is what it is, and I'm not fazed, really. I think there are a certain number of players you can go into the season with that have the double bye, as long as you're not overloading on players that have the double bye in the same week. So obviously don't overload on, Sydney players, Collingwood players, and so on and so forth. But keep in mind that you do need solid scorers on the bench to then sub in for those primos like a Goulden who will be on their first early buy. So you've got to weigh all that up. But I think with Goulden, I want that assurance of knowing that I'm going to be starting him. Don't have to worry about trying to get him in. And I think he could really rise in price and take his game to another level if that is at all possible. Next up we have in M4. Down the list here, 23% of teams took Miller. So he comes into my side. I spoke of him in the previous Team Reveal 2.0 video that I was keen to find a way to get him in. And I just think he's super extreme value at 545.5k. And I see him being again, elevating his game back to the level it was in previous seasons, being a top 8 midfielder. And I think he will be this season. So yes, he's into my team. And I think it was at the expense of Carl Amon, I think I had in my team. Amon I did like the game of, and yeah, playing a distributor role very much like a Nick Martin or a Max Holmes or the Nick Dacos role that they're calling it. And I did like it because he was everywhere. He was the first choice kick in when Sicily wasn't taking it, and then if he wasn't taking the kick ins, he was at least the second or third player in the chain coming out of defence. So he's getting his hands on the ball pretty consistently. So I'd love to start Amon as well. And that may be sort of something that I'm looking at doing, maybe coming out of round 0, going into round 1 when we have to finalise our team. So took Miller. Aside from that, he came out, smashed it in the preseason game, scored about 100, I think it was 110 plus. So yeah, really like what I saw. He's got that traditional role back in the engine room. So he should be a top 8 scoring mid, like I said. Moving on to M5, and we have a guy that I think he was in my team in the last iteration. Really love what I saw. Nick Martin, 21% of teams. So he like we speak of the Nick Dacos role as a distributor coming out of defense, but I think in terms of all guys that have got this role, aside from Dacos himself, Nick Martin to me is the one guy who plays so much like Dacos, gets so high up the ground, where he's literally at stages like in the forward line and then able to run back. He's kind of, I liken it to being a wingman morphed in with a half backer. So he goes that next level, that next step in going further up the ground without having the worry to, he's got that confidence in knowing that he's got that endurance to then run back and transition, if need be, back into defense to really provide support. So with the forward movement of the ball for Essendon, he really does just run and carry and all that sort of stuff. Even when he doesn't have the ball, you watch him and he'll get into open spaces and stuff and provide an avenue for players to hit him up and help transition the ball. So Nick Martin, he is in my team and will be a lock and load. Next up, we have the rookies at M6. McKercher, spoke enough about him. Don't worry about him, that he was a little bit down in the official preseason game. Lock and load. Sanders had 30-odd disposals, an absolute gun. This guy's he's going to be a champion. Lock and load in your teams. And then at M8, I did have Nat Fyfe in my team ever so fleetingly. And I slapped myself across the face, spoke to my therapist, and they said, okay, you've admitted that you've got a Fyfe addiction. That's the first step, is acceptance. The step after this is, yes, you may have a little bit of a relapse, which I did. I had him in my team, but I've got him out of my team now. And I've changed him for good reason as well. First and foremost, the guy that I've brought into my team is someone that's blown me away in the preseason, a youngster that's sort of come from the clouds for the Hawks in Henry Hustwaite. So he is actually around about 100k cheaper than Nat Fyfe. He doesn't have any injury history. He's a youngster. He's on the verge of breaking out. And what we saw across the preseason, not just the official preseason game, but his in and under work is absolutely fantastic. He's at that height as well, like a Nat Fyfe, like a Paddy Cripps even, that he's got that height advantage across his opponents. He's got that endurance as a tall player. He's a unique player, and I think he's on the verge of potentially breaking out and helping take Hawthorn back up the ladder. So I really do enjoy Hustwaite, and I'm looking to have him as a bit of a lock and load at this stage. Outside of him, let's go to the bench, and we have, we'll just quickly roll through because it hasn't changed for me. Darcy Wilson, he was probably the best performing rookie, arguably, across the preseason. Smashed it in the official preseason game. So lock and load Darcy Wilson. Make sure he's in your team. 57% ownership. Outside of Darcy Wilson, we have Jeremy Sharp from Freo, who's obviously crossed over from the Suns, in 43% of teams. Didn't blow me away in the preseason, but I think the one thing about Jeremy Sharp is he's going to be best 23 from week to week, and that job security at that price point is super valuable. So he is in my team at the moment. And then we have Jai Clark, of course, who impressed even more so in the official preseason game. Really good, 50% ownership as well, and rightfully so, because he is going to be a breakout star up and coming for the Cats. Outside of these guys here that I'm looking at potentially bringing into my team in terms of youngsters is Matt Roberts for the Swans. He's playing more of a halfback role now. Looked pretty good for the Swans. So watch and see how he performs in round 0. If he comes out and smashes it, the role looks good. He's cemented best 23. I would happily switch out potentially a Jeremy Sharp to a Matt Roberts. Or maybe do some switches from the forward rookies and switch Darcy Wilson into the forward line. So we'll wait and see with that, but he is still on my radar. Moving on to the rucks now. And we have, hasn't changed at all, Maxi Gawn, lock and load, Brodie Grundy, lock and load. Don't be worried about Grundy. I've seen so many people worried about his lack of game time first and foremost, and also his scoring output. I think he played 60% of the match or thereabouts, and people were worried about, yes, he's not scoring well. He's being managed in the preseason. He's a senior player nowadays. You can't expect him to come out and play a full game and smash it. Again, much like LDU, you can't expect all the top liners to come out and smash it like Gawn did, with scoring the 188 or whatever it was against Carlton. So, yeah, he Grundy to me is still a lock and load, and I think people jumping off might be kicking themselves by going for another option. But we do have another option that's propped up in recent days, which I will speak about at the very end when it comes to Luke Jackson. So, yeah, we'll... look at that and discuss that ever so briefly at the end. But for R3, another guy that should be a lock and load now is Sam Naismith. So in 35% of teams, it should be a lock and load on the benches of everyone's teams as an R3 because Nank the Tank has been ruled out for round 0, 100% confirmed, and he's actually still not guaranteed to play in round 1 against Carlton. So he's got a couple of weeks to recover at least, and yeah, see how he goes. But the injury that Nank the Tank has, it's to do with a tendon. It's the plantar fascia at the base of the foot, I think it is, and it's to do with like you can get soreness there. And there's no real, I guess, definitive timeline around the recovery. There are actually players in the past that have suffered from it where they've had it season long and they've had to actually have surgery to alleviate the issue. So again, there's no guarantee that Nank comes back in round 1. So it could be a longer term thing. And Naismith, you'd want to be on him because he's actually been one of the more impressive players for me that I've seen over the preseason. Took it up to Max Gawn in their, I guess, match sim when the Tigs played Melbourne. And then in the official preseason game, again, he came out and looked really, really good around the ground as well, taking marks, kicking for goal, all that sort of stuff. So lock and load Naismith in. Don't worry about trying to get a bottom priced rookie like a Finbar Malley or whatever to save cash or use as a loophole. We're going to have players in the early part of the season, which always happens, that either get injured or they get dropped, and you're going to get like a player that you can use as a bit of a loophole option there. So don't worry about getting a loophole at the moment, and just an opportunity here that we haven't had in previous seasons where we have an extra cash cow potentially, and a good cash cow, because as we know, cash cows that play ruck, just because they got the opportunity of really having a high ceiling and a high floor, their cash can skyrocket very, very quickly. You don't want to be starting without Naismith and then having to scramble and waste a trade first and foremost to really get him into your team, but also to find extra cash. If you've gone for a bottom price 102.4k rookie at R3, you're going to need 19k roughly to bring Naismith in. And if you've gone into the season with less than 19k, you're not going to be able to bring Naismith in. So don't worry about the headaches of having to do that down the track. Start with Naismith and you'll be totally fine. Let's move on to the forward line now, rounding us out. The other inclusion into my team is Zachy Fisher. So blew us away in the official preseason game, was taking kick-ins, was running, carrying, all that sort of stuff. He's, again, disposal under pressure isn't the best. I've spoken about that enough, but I think at that price point, but most importantly, in this role, I think, if given the chance to really take over the Jack Zeeble role, which it looks like he will be, taking kick-ins, all that sort of stuff, running carry, he could be a very, very valuable playing cash cow. So he's in my team now. Outside of that, we have at F2, James Jordan, again, blew us away in the official preseason game. 30-odd disposals or thereabouts. Taylor Adams has hurt himself, hurt his knee, and there's an opportunity there for him to get, first and foremost, more CBAs, but also an uptick in scoring as well. So he should be a lock and load in everyone's teams. But again, round 0, we get a free look. Assess after that as well. In F3, we have a guy that hasn't, again, left my team. Jack Billings looked good, again, in the official preseason game against Carlton. So he is a lock and load. Should be a very nice playing cash cow. We should be able to score consistently enough and make us 150k at minimum. Next up, we have at F4, Harley Reid. People were jumping off him. I stuck fat and was impressed with his official preseason game. Really doing some nice things and flashed the brilliance and talent that he does have. So everyone should be jumping on him in 74% of teams at the moment anyway. So yeah, people are already across him. Next up, we have at F5, Caleb Windsor. In terms of rookies, he's probably one of the standout options. I think everyone should have him at 180.3k. Should get opportunity. Will play. Has been confirmed as well for round 0 to make his debut alongside Billings. So again, lock and load. Now the other guy that impressed me, who's kind of a mature age player, been around the traps for a while, but a new role, is this man here, Alex Sexton for the Suns. He comes into my team at F6. 48% of teams now, looked really good, racked up the pill, 25 plus disposal thereabouts. That distributor role, again, there's so many players that have gone into this role now that provide extreme value, and he is one of them, so he is in my team. Now let's move on to the bench now to round things out, and it is, first up, a guy that has made his way into my team for the moment. It is Lazaro from North Melbourne. 15% of teams he is in, and looked pretty good across the course of the preseason, match sims, intra clubs, and the official preseason game. He kind of was up and down, faded in and out of the game, but still looked pretty good. And I think he should be able to average between 60 and 70 odd, and make us some nice cash at that higher price point even. So, yeah, he is someone that I am keen on. When I spoke of Matt Roberts earlier, he is someone that I would potentially think about bringing in at the expense of Lazaro. So if I was to do that, I'd have to switch Wilson into the forward line, and then Matt Roberts, being a mid only, would have to obviously go on the mid bench. So still something to look at off the back of round 0, and I will assess off the back of that. But yeah, there's an option there as well to keep Lazaro, considering I do have some money in the bank, which I'll get into in a moment. And the last spot on my bench and in my team, in the forward line, is a guy that isn't confirmed as yet, because I'm waiting to see how things go in round 0. But at the moment, I do have, just scrolling down the list here, Aaron Cadman. He actually looked pretty good. I think he's going to be a slow burn. That's the thing. As we know, key position forwards and key position defenders, they generally are a very, very slow cash generator option. So I'll wait to see. I am more of a fan of Sam Darcy. He didn't play the official preseason game. Otherwise, I probably would have had Sam Darcy in. But Darcy played the VFL, kicked 4 goals 2 or 4 goals 3 or something. And I think he probably should be in line for, the round 1 team for the Western Bulldogs. So if that's the case, and I think he will be giving a little bit of a chop out to Tim English at various stages as well, so easy points there. I would prefer to have Sam Darcy in my team at 4K or thereabouts cheaper. So yeah, we'll wait and see how things go with team lineups and assess from there. But outside of that, that is my team, ladies and gents, that I've just rolled through, heading into round 0. And yeah, there's the changes that I've made there off the basis. I've tried not, as sort of on a whole, tried not to sort of gut my team too much, because I can see people reading too much into the preseason again, and it can really undo you because, like I said, using LDU as a bit of an example there are guys there that perform poorly in the preseason, then they come out in the in-season and absolutely smash it. So yeah, that's kind of what I've kept in mind as well. But I think the one tip that I can give for everyone, if you're stuck in a bit of a pickle, what I would be doing is prioritising your rookies first and foremost, because you need those guys locked in. You need the correct rookies that are going to make you the most cash, because they're going to be able to allow you to afford and upgrade your team across the journey of the season. So keep that in mind, and then outside of that, build your team around that guideline. As you can see here, I've still got 130.9k in the bank. So again, provides me a little bit of flexibility coming out around 0 if I need to make any changes. But we will assess from there. The other thing I wanted to obviously have a chat about was in relation to Hodido / Shrek / Sean Darcy, as he's actually known. He has gone down and been ruled out with, they've said multiple weeks, I guess, in terms of the guideline. He had an arthroscope done on his knee, so they virtually just cleaned out some what they're calling foreign bodies or loose bodies in his knee, because he had a bit of soreness after the preseason game that he played. Only played around about half the game. Reported the soreness. They went in with an arthroscope and they found that there was some loose, whether it be ligaments, cartilage, all that sort of stuff around his joint there in his knee. They've cleaned it out. They haven't provided Freo, as I record this, with a definitive timeline on his return. But it's not a traditional injury as such. It's more so just with soreness. So it's just in terms of his recovery from the arthroscope. But yeah, we'll wait and see the timeline for return that Freo will give us on Darcy. And outside of that, for me anyway, that timeline will dictate whether or not I'll be keen to try and bring Luke Jackson into my team. As we know, with Jackson, when he's rucking without Darcy in the team, he absolutely smashes it. And when Darcy's in the team, he's obviously playing more time as a forward. So, just for, I guess, a bit of context here. So Jackson, he's actually averaging, when he's playing alongside Darcy, playing more up forward, a score of 87. But when Darcy's out of the team and when Jackson is called upon to take that number 1 ruck mantle, his average goes up to 119. So it's a really big jump in average. 32 average points. So incredible. So that's something I think people need to keep in mind. But I think if Darcy's only going to be out for, the first 2 weeks of the season, for example, I think only having Jackson in your team because you think he's going to be, taking the ruck mantle for 2 weeks, I don't think it's worth it. Sure, you're going to get the big average games across the first 2 weeks, but once Darcy comes back into the team, Luke Jackson's going to be relegated to the forward line again. So that average is going to drop down to, again, from 1910 to 87. So I don't really see it as worthwhile at that price point as well. It means that I'd need to virtually just throw my team to disarray and try and find the extra money, but also, a candidate that I'd need to trade or switch up to Luke Jackson. And at this point, it probably would be Zach Fisher. And I'd need to get rid of someone like a Lazaro. So it is possible, but I think Zach Fisher has that upside where he's actually going to provide a bit of benefit in being that playing cash cow. So he's going to make us cash. I don't think Luke Jackson's going to really make us any cash at all. And I think if you're selecting him at that price point, talk about, being a cash cow and playing cash cow, all that sort of stuff, at Jackson's price of 547k, you're selecting him as a keeper. I don't think you're going to be keeping him in your team and then trading him out. Maybe you could use a tactic that was spoken about previously where, using Tom Green as an example, before he goes into his bye, ride his first few scores and then trade him out. You could do that with Luke Jackson up until Sean Darcy returns. But I think then again, it's a bit of a waste of a trade to trade out Jackson and virtually you're only just riding him for the score. Whereas I think with the benefit with the Tom Green example is you're virtually trading him out because it means they're avoiding having to, play a rookie if you were keeping Tom Green. So I don't think I'm a fan of that option either. So if Hodor Darcy is out for say 5+ weeks, I think I will consider it. Anything less than that, and I think I'll be like, yeah, I don't know. But again, with Sean Darcy, he's got that injury history as well. This is I think he started the season for once in the past 3 seasons or something. He's played in the first game of the season, so he's got that history about him. And he's going to break down at various stages just because of his fitness issues. And yeah, the other thing to keep in mind, that conversely, is that it's not a traditional injury. He hasn't injured his knee. It's just literally he's got soreness, a bit of inflammation that's come up off the back of what they've found to be, these loose, cartilage and stuff that's floating around his knee. So the timeline on return is really a big factor in whether or not I will be starting with Luke Jackson. And I think a lot of people should be factoring that into their teams as well, just because we're at the stage now, we're literally on the cusp of starting our season. We've got a settled side by and large, and we don't want to be gutting our team in order to, find a place for Luke Jackson, just because he may be taking over the number 1 ruck mantle for a small portion of the season. But yeah, again, as I said, if you're selecting him, I'd be trying to keep him for the remainder of the season. Kind of a waste to start with him and then trade him out. I can see both sides of the coin. We've got extra trades, I know that, but it's an extra 4 trades on last year that, if we had those extra 4 trades last year, that would have helped us immensely with the amount of injuries that we had in the back end, because the majority of people run out by around about round 20, round 21 or thereabouts. So got to keep all that in mind, but we will decide once Freo come out with a bit of a solid timeline around the return of Sean Darcy. Outside of that, ladies and gents, I think that is pretty much my team as it stands. Of course, it may change after round 0 once we see those teams in action, see roles first and foremost, who's getting most game time, who's benefiting from other guys that are regulars that are injured, and so on and so forth. So, yep, we will wait and see there and assess. And after that, of course, just looking ahead in terms of content you can expect from us, Liam and I, we will be reconvening, obviously, post round 0 and doing our analysis of those teams that have played, players that stood out, especially those notable players like the likes of James Jordan, Billings, Windsor, so on and so forth, Goulden. So yeah, we will be doing a bit of a recap analysis on the round 0 games. And then, of course, we will be doing another official team reveal heading into round 1 when we have to lock and load all of our players into our team and strap ourselves in and hold on tight, because that's when the fun begins. So thanks again for tuning in. Of course, thank you so much for following us across all of our accounts. Again, if you haven't followed us, on YouTube, especially if you're tuning in via YouTube at the moment. Make sure to give us a follow as well. Really do appreciate all of that support that you are giving us. And likewise as well, if you are listening to us via the podcast route, depending on if you're from the US or Australia, you can give us a rating system on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, as well as any other platform that you listen to us on. So again, really do appreciate it. And until next time, we'll catch you same time, same place. We'll see you then. Cheers.